This is Ed in San Diego. You can see the San Diego Harbor on a sunny day and sailboats from San Diego Yacht Club out there. And it's right off Harbor Island, which is a man-made island in the harbor. Uh, and it fronts the bay. And on the other side is San Diego Airport. And you can see the downtown in the background, just to give you an idea. Um, and I took that picture maybe a month ago, and I was sitting in a restaurant in that exact position, looking that way. um, Tom Ham's Lighthouse. It's juts out into the bay, a beautiful place. And the best seat is outside under the blue umbrellas. You can't see it in this picture. And watching the boats in action. It's very cool. This is about C-suite essentially, and leadership development, and how how should leaders, can't say manage anymore because I've been trained well by Stephen, but thinking about communicating, uh, oh, I don't want to say managing, but high achievers. And how do you keep them being a high achiever without screwing things up? So we're taking the top level, C-suite level approach today on how should a leader mentor and develop more. Stephen Howard.
Oh, great. Throw it to me, why don't you? I have two comments or two thoughts there. And this applies to C-suite, but I think it applies at all levels of the organization. When you're mentoring someone, I suggest you figure out what they're strong at, what they're good at, and how they can use those strengths to close whatever gap areas. We spend too much time talking about, they got this gap here, they're weak in this area, or they need to boost this, but we don't think about how to use their strengths. So for instance, I was coaching someone a couple of weeks ago, and one of her strengths is she says she's very good at creating solutions and problem solving. And then we discussed an issue she was having. It was an interpersonal issue, and she didn't know what to do. And I said, why don't you think about that as a problem? And how would you brainstorm to solve your personal interaction issues as a problem? And she did. And we talked 2 weeks later and she fixed it. So I think that's one thing. But in the C-suite and maybe down to the second level, those reporting the C-suite, the other thing I highly recommend is we mentor people cross-functionally. People get put into boxes. Like I was a marketing person, and fortunately I had a leader who forced me to learn more about financial management of the bank, because I didn't know how the bank made money when they hired me. And so he had the CFO sit down and spend 3 or 4 weeks training me about the financial aspects of how we can make money, which made me a better marketing person. And we created products that really boosted the bank's profitability in Singapore at the time. So that's the two things I'd say: leverage strengths and mentor cross-functionally, not just for the job they have, but so that they're a better resource for the whole organization.
Dr. Ken Lloyd.
Yeah, it's nice to see everybody today. And I see you really have upgraded that background. That's really a beautiful site over there, Ed.
Thank you.
Yeah,
some of them don't come out so good, but that one did.
That's one of your talents. It's great. Yeah, totally in accord and in alignment with what Stephen just had said. Yeah, it is in terms of looking at leadership and individual development. We want to motivate, if you will, employees. We're really talking more about self-motivation. What are the needs, the interests, the desires that they bring to the workplace, and what can we as individuals in leadership positions do to help create a setting in which they can fulfill their motivations? So if they come with a high need to achieve, just to take that as a concept, we want to make sure that in working with them and helping to define what they're doing collaboratively, that there are opportunities for them to genuinely achieve, learn, grow, and develop in the job. And in that sense, they will be motivated. It's not like we're motivating them with fear, do this or that, which you can motivate someone with fear. You'll motivate them to quit. as opposed to focusing on the internal drives and motivations that they bring, and then setting up an environment where they can fulfill them. And that way we're working with them, we're supporting them, and certainly for today's employees in particular, helping them move along a path of growth and development, which is, again, a very top priority that we're seeing in the workplace today.
Can that be done virtually at the same level as in person?
My belief on that is that yes, it can be done virtually. Certainly face-to-face is more compelling from the standpoint of communicating and actually working with someone. You can pick up so many more cues when you're actually with the person, and those are all essential for effective communication. But again, this is still, as we're communicating now, better than if we were all on a phone call, and just doing a conference call about this. So we're picking up cues, like I see Christian now, and it's very different. So yeah, it can be done virtually, but obviously face-to-face is more compelling and effective. Yes, Christian.
Thank you, Ken. Just wanted to add something to what you said, because that's something I experienced. My last manager, who was brilliant manager, he's based in Atlanta. I'm in Southern California. And when we started working together, it was all virtual. Well, it was also COVID at the time, but there was this distance there. But once we met in person, because he flew in to meet me and also meet my team for the first time, the impact was so tremendous compared to if we had just met face to face for the first time, and that was the normal way to go. So there's also that. If you can mix it up, even if it's a rare occasion, it's very memorable.
Angie, hello.
Hi.
So what's your experience in mentoring high achievers?
So first of all, I just wanted to throw in a little remark, because I work as an executive coach. So that is different than mentoring. Obviously, I have my own experience of being mentored in the past when I was still in a corporate career. Many of my mentors were also highly successful women. So at the time, that was really important to me to have those role models. But what I want to say about coaching high achievers is, one of the things I always notice right now is that, first of all, we need to sort of establish again who they are. Because, they're more than just performers. They're more than resources. And I sometimes feel like in the coaching process, we strengthen their self-worth and understanding that they're not just a performer, but they're also like a human being. So I think what is most important is to bring into alignment the personal values and the personal, let's say, setup, how you are, with the purpose that you've set out to change in the world. And if they can achieve that, then performance is almost an automatic outcome. So where the contradiction, I think, occurs, and lower performance often occurs where the values of the individual are not aligned with what the company wants from them. So I find that really important that, when we talk about high performance, that it's, or high achievers, it's not always just about some external goal setting process or achieving goals, or setting good goals and making sure that your mentee knows what they're talking about. And I also think that we need to take one topic into consideration. When we think about mentors, which is something I just find important to stress in my role here in this group, is that a diverse audience and a multicultural audience might need a different kind of mentoring than what you think as the C-level person that you are, what this person needs. So sometimes, you know, we also need, as mentors, need to keep open to our own blindfolds and our own biases. And I think that's a bit hard for a lot of senior leaders out there. That's why I sometimes think it's important to bring coaches in as well.
Ron, welcome.
Thank you. I resonate with everything you're saying. I can build on just a little bit more of what Stephen said. And just very briefly for your listeners, I'm 22 years Air Force. I'm F4 pilot. And sometimes those who know military fighter pilots think that I don't need to speak with, or I just know military fighter pilots are the cocky, arrogant, obnoxious, braggadocious type people. But in that context, and I don't think we all are, sometimes we come across with that edge of bravado. But one thing Stephen said, one thing about us military is we don't want to be pigeonholed. In Angie, yes, hire on values. If I have the right values, those values that align with the C-suite, the company, I hire people based on those values. And if you don't have the experience I'm looking for, I know I can train you. And I hire fast learners. And yes, Angie, coaching and mentoring is very different. We are executive coaches as well. In that context, there are some of us who have potential, but there are limiting factors, limiting beliefs, and we need to help those people over whatever may be holding us back. Virtually everybody has some aspect of insecurity. And if you're willing to accept my thinking and help advance me, then I can help your company go in the direction you want to go, even though I may have been hired for X position. Maybe I can think outside of that. And if you accept my thinking, I can help advance your company, particularly if I know your company's strategic objectives. So I need to know long-term where you're going. And we military types have the discipline to think and want to advance your company. A lot more that could be said, Ed, but those are just some of my thoughts.
Well, I want to ask you, did Tom Cruise, Maverick, come to you for lessons?
Didn't come to me for lessons, but you know, there is a lot of the exuberant bravado that we see in Maverick. And yes, so some of that braggadocious way is we want to walk around with 3 women on each arm type thing until our wives say, just cool it, buckwheat. So it is people like my wife who say, okay, just take it down about 19 notches. But yes, there is a lot of that bravado, or let's just say exuberance, maybe another way of expressing that.
No, thank you for playing along with me here. Stephen, back to you on this. I'm taking some notes here the old-fashioned way, hire on values. In English, what does hire on values mean, Stephen?
Well, you want somebody who has the values that meshes with the corporate culture. Number one, you look at some of the areas, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, they claim to have great corporate cultures, but the value of the leaders was focused on results, not on people, and even not on honesty. I mean, Wells Fargo opening up numerous accounts for people that they didn't need and charging them, monthly fees. I mean, I wrote a book about the Volkswagen scandal, the emissions scandal, and the leadership lessons that could be learned from, Volkswagen purposefully cheating the Clean Air Act from the EPA on purpose. And it's interesting because here you have a situation where engineers typically, being stereotypical, but engineers tend to have pretty good values, pretty good honesty. I mean, if you're an engineer, you want things to work properly. You don't design cars to crash. And yet these engineers, because of the pressure of their leadership in Germany, actually installed a cheat device, a software that would cheat the EPA emission standards, and it affected almost 11 million vehicles in the United States. Just as an aside, this just see how costly this can be. It is cost, and this is, I think this happens 9 years ago when it began. This has cost Volkswagen over $35 billion since then, and it's still going on. And at least 3 of their, one executive and 2 senior managers have served jail time, 1 in Korea and 2 here in the United States. So these are costly mistakes if you don't have the right values as a leader.
So we see what's going on, and this is not a political show, it's strictly business. But with the media pervasive, we're looking at leadership development. Let's just say Kamala Harris, okay? She's a rock star. And in the past, she's been hidden or told to stay in a corner and be quiet. And now all of a sudden, America is electrified, almost all of America. And again, it's not political, it's just what we're seeing and the values that Harris is exhibiting to everybody, but she's targeting women, that's for sure, to make sure that's her base. And how she's treating former President Trump, and switching the media emphasis, masterful. And I don't know whether Steven Spielberg's been guiding her quietly, or his lieutenants, on how to frame a retort, but spot on. So in dealing with high performers within a corporate environment now, Stephen, and Ron, please jump in anytime. I'm playing moderator here. I'm a reporter, if you will, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm seeing what needs to be talked about by you people who are hands-on in this regards. Stephen, and then Ron, please.
Well, the media always goes for the hot topic, anything they can get viewers or clicks or TV viewers at ad rates. Going back to the Volkswagen thing, the sad thing is that Volkswagen.
Oh, we can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Everyone can hear me.
Oh, wait.
All right, so you spill coffee on your speakers? Volkswagen was named one of the top environmental friendly companies in Europe by a publication 3 months before the scandal hit. And they were added by an investment banking firm in the UK. They were added to a fund that was going to invest in clean energy companies. And so, if you want to, use your personal values and invest in companies that were supposedly good for the environment, good for the earth, Volkswagen was in that fund. And again, that happened like 4 months before. So people, even media, don't really have an insight into what's going on. They have superficial views, superficial, not insights, but perspectives. And then they play things up. And everyone sits on a roll. And so Volkswagen was the shining rock star for a while. John Reed was a shining rock star at Citibank. Welch was a shining rock star at GE for years. And then unfortunately we finally get tarnished. I mean, look at Elon Musk. Musk 2 years ago was a rock star. I wouldn't do anything with Elon Musk these days. You saw him fire 10,000 people at Tesla. I mean, how do you run an organization and staff it to the extent that you have 10,000 too many employees and then have to fire them all at one time? I mean, that's not leadership. That is extremely poor management in my view. And that's my soapbox for today. By the way, happy Friday 13th, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll interject right here that the values that some of the values I look for are, I need to know that you are legal, you are morally correct, and you're ethically correct. And that aligns a lot with what Stephen was saying. And I can't have a person who might embezzle funds. I can't have a person who, in a social context, I don't want people undermining each other on social media, those kind of things. We need to respect each other. And so I need to know through interviewing that those are your principal values. That's what guides you on any given day, that we're going to work together toward the greater good of what this company culture is. And I'm a believer the CEO is the one who establishes the culture of any business.
Ed, I think your headset isn't working or something, but I just wanted to add something to what Stephen was saying. And Stephen, you probably know more about it than I do, but as far as I can remember, one of the biggest shareholders of Volkswagen GmbH is the government, the state, the Bundesland of, I think, Niedersachsen. So what that means is Volkswagen didn't just screw over their customers, they screwed over the taxpayers who own a significant chunk of the company. So this is public. Talk about, values in the business environment. Well, this is not a bank that's fully shareholder owned on the stock market, and the government has no influence.
And that's
Government
why
is a big shareholder here.
the wheels of justice roll slowly, but that's why just now one of the senior executives is finally facing a court trial in Germany. It's just a phenomenal story. But it's not just Volkswagen. I mean, there's just so many people who focus on that bottom line or shareholders and the compensation, because they get paid in shares and bonuses in shares, and they rack up the share price. And but going to what Ron just said, another example in there was at the same time that this was happening, or just after it hit, the EPA announced their actions against Volkswagen, one of the senior executives of Audi flew from Germany, went to Austria, and spent thousands and thousands of dollars on a party for their dealership. Just phenomenal. And just 2 years ago or 3 years ago, during I think it was during coronavirus, might have been just before, Microsoft went and spent tens of thousands of dollars on a private party, hired, I think it wasn't Peter Frampton, but it was a rock star from the UK to perform, paid him hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the next day announced layoffs. This is just intolerable, the actions that are happening in the business world. And I think that's why you see the new Generation Z is just shaking their heads and saying, we don't want to work for people like this. In fact, we don't even want to buy products from people like this. So they're hurting the long-term viability of their organizations, as we're seeing again in Volkswagen today.
I also think, Stephen and others, that this is one of the big value questions that we need to put on the table with everyone who we're hiring, is the question of long-term sustainability in terms of what we do and how we can be sustainable in our work. And I wanted to come back to the topic of mentoring, because I'm not sure if everybody in the audience is clear on what it actually means to mentor somebody. It's usually not the same as being somebody's manager or direct manager. It's also not the same as coaching. But what exactly does it mean to have a mentoring relationship? How do you get started with mentoring? How do people even get assigned to a mentor is important. So if we think, for example, about women or about marginalized groups, how do they even get a mentor in an organization? I would already question that. Some companies have established mentoring programs, or here, for example, we have something called cross-mentoring, where senior leaders mentor someone from a marginalized group in another company. But how does that actually happen? How are people selected for these kind of goodies? That for me is already a questionable topic. So, I think sustainability is a really important argument to consider and a value to consider, but also inclusion and making sure that everybody gets a seat at the table. Any opinions that you have on, how would you even set up a mentoring relationship? Maybe Ken, you have some insights on that.
Well, it's interesting. I'm thinking about going back to values and what we're really talking about. Values as being deeply held beliefs about what's right and wrong and good and bad and fair and unfair, but on a very deep level. These values then shape our attitudes, which are far more tangible and out there toward a lot more of what's going on in the world around us. And attitudes shape behaviors. We behave in great part as a result of our attitudes, which emanate from our deeply held beliefs. Now, our behaviors can shape our attitudes, and attitudes can shape behaviors as well. And that's kind of where mentoring would come in, provided that someone just doesn't walk up to me and say, we have a mentor for you, Ken, and you're going to sit down. There really has to be truly a collaborative process based on openness, honesty, trust, interest in what my needs and my hopes and my goals are, so that it's really, if you will, a respectful and trusting relationship between an employee and his or her mentor for the purpose of meeting some of the needs we talked about in the beginning in terms of growth, development, career advancement, and that type of focus. But it is not a one-way street at all. That's not mentoring. That's not coaching. That's kind of what Stephen was saying in terms of managing, treating people as resources and items instead of as humans. And to me, the human aspect under mentoring is critical to the process as a two-way street.
Well, Stephen, how do you study humans to gain this understanding?
Oh, that's my favorite thing to do. I go to shopping centers and let my girlfriend shop, and I sit there and watch people. I mean, people, one of the things that made me a good marketing person, Ed, was I've been doing this all my life. I could spot trends before others because I would watch people, and I could see particularly, fashion trends or social media trends and see what to get on. And also I could spot what's not going to work, like the metaverse. I was one of the few critics of the metaverse. I thought this is a waste of time. I counseled many companies not to waste their money on it. And fortunately I was proved right, and now we're into AI instead of the metaverse. But I think one of the best things I've ever done education-wise was my first 2 years of college. I took psychology, 101, 102, and then the second year psychology 201 and 202, or whatever they were called at the time. Getting just that basic psychology is a great way to understand people. And then read Daniel Goleman's books about emotional intelligence. It's not just a book on emotional intelligence, then he had a follow-up book about how to use emotional intelligence or something like that. And you combine that ability to observe and then use emotional intelligence, and you will be, you'd be a better human being. The third thing, if I can, buy my new book that comes out in October, because it's all about having a different mindset about interacting with people.
What's the title?
A Humany Mindset. I'm taking the concept of the Humany Leadership book and applying it now to people's interpersonal relationships on a societal basis, on a non-workplace basis.
Humany Mindset.
Mindset. Yeah.
Good.
The subtitle says, change your mindset, change the world by changing your mindset. So I'm not talking about, solving world peace, but change your own world, change where you live in Orange County, Christian. Change your neighborhood, change the school experience that your children go through by changing your mindset. I'm not saying you need to, Christian, just your neighbor. Your neighbor needs to change that.
Yeah. I'm not going to move anytime soon. I've moved too much.
No move, just change. But you have your neighbors change their mindset.
Oh boy. Okay, this is great. So, Ken, are you impacted by any fires in San Fernando Valley?
We have some smoke out here. We were more impacted by the earthquake that struck and gave Malibu a shake, and it shook all the way through here. And at this point now, here we go again. And when the ground starts shaking, you don't know if it's going to get worse, if it's going to stop, if it's going to get better. And it's a little unnerving. And suddenly, it's all those projects that you're working on suddenly take a second tier as you say, all right, what's going on with the earth here? The fire dangers out here are real. And what I literally read this morning, it's going to get worse as we get into autumn. So there's a lot of what was greenery that's turning into kindling wood. And that makes for a very dangerous situation. So I'm more concerned about the potential for additional fires out here than currently. So we're not too smoked out here at this point, but we are shaken up. That's for sure.
Here in downtown San Diego, there's nothing happening yet.
Good.
But
Stay that way.
son-in-law has properties in Rancho Santa Margarita, which and there's fire across the street, but
Yes.
it's been contained. And then he also has beautiful property on Big Bear Lake, and the fire has not yet hit Big Bear, but it's over a couple of mountains. It's pretty rugged, huge territory. It's quite a ways away, but fire department has told people to prepare to evacuate. Of course, they don't tell them where to go because both exit roads are closed. And that there's only one, there's a third one that goes 18 highway, goes down into the high desert, Victorville. And of course, there's no forest there. It's all desert. So I don't know whether those people in Victorville have any hotel rooms available or what, but there's about to be, unfortunately, people escaping. Okay, so all of that is about values and preparation and what do you do in a crisis? So let's talk about crisis management as it relates to human high achievement and making the right decisions under pressure. And I don't know what I'm talking about. Ron, would you take over, please?
Yeah, crisis. Here's one thought I have with that whatever it is in your life, your company, your family that constitutes a crisis, do I have the courage to confront? Do I have the ability to think into the components of the crisis? That is, what if I were to propose a solution, and I certainly want to, in the context of mentoring, I want to have my people have the thought process. If you see something that's not right, think into it and come up with a solution. Don't just complain about it. No, I want you to offer a solution to me. I'm not the best person to come up with all the solutions, but you have a perspective and you have probably a proposed solution. So I want for you to do that. I want for these people to have the courage to confront and say, I want to help you resolve this, but the culture has to be very accepting of that. And what Stephen was saying about knowing people, everyone has a personality. And do we care enough to learn that person's personality and adapt to them? My hope is as we mentor people, we help people have the courage, we help them with their problem-solving skills, and we choose to adapt to their personality, their perspective, and we want to come together. In the context of proposing solutions without taking a lot of time, I want to help the person propose a solution that will globally benefit everyone, not just you. So that's a mindset. And so a lot more can go into that subject, but that's just part of the mindset that I want to help create as a leader and mentor people to that end.
Angie?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to that. What I'm observing, and as I said, I'm not in a mentoring role, but in a coach role. It would be lovely if we had leaders who would actually allow people to be intuitive and make decisions, especially when it comes to crisis situations. However, I notice very much and I'm talking about a European, mainly European context, I'm noticing a lot of micromanagement, fear culture, and a lack of psychological safety.
Hmm.
And we're talking about people who are like entitled to executive coaching. So they must be high achievers, because otherwise the company wouldn't even think about paying for executive coaching, right? So why as a manager or leader do you have a need to micromanage your people? The only reason I can find is your own insecurities. Yeah, because
Agreed.
a good leader, like you said, would give them the freedom to make decisions, come up with solutions, define the pain points, and then, especially in crisis situation, make decisions. I have a distinct situation in mind from the tsunami in 2011, where I made a decision about repatriating a couple and their kids to Switzerland from Japan. And later on, got into trouble because of doing that. But it took a while until the CEO and the COO of the operation finally said, "No, you actually care a lot, and that's why, because you care, you made that decision, but you should have asked us." Now, it was a weekend. I didn't reach anyone. I didn't know who to contact because I was fairly new in the organization, and I would have said, it would have been better in hindsight to just say, "Hey, you made a decision, you made a call, you asked your direct manager had your back. So, it was great that you made that decision because it was a crisis. And in a crisis, we should trust that people know what they're doing." But I really noticed that a lot with my coaching clients, that very often they're quite micromanaged, and it's a shame. Sorry, Christian, please.
So, as an example, in my world of corporate relocation, where things just happen very quickly and can go wrong very quickly, what you need to be able to do is coach your team of relocation consultants that they can think on their feet, and that they can, in a crisis, that they can immediately step in and start reacting. And what I tried to convey to them was that they need to think about triage. Think of an emergency room. Think of a whole bunch of people coming into the emergency room at once, and you have to make decisions, and they're life and death decisions, which you don't have in relocation, but the concept is still the same. You have to make decisions about who to help first. And because of that, that whatever you do is not going to be perfect, but it's going to be the right thing to do. A little bit like, Angie, like your example. You thought that was the right thing to do. And what that means also is that you don't necessarily have time to analyze the situation and think about, oh, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do this. You have to act and think, the best way to help these people in this situation is this. And then you act. And then you go to the next one, you go to the next one, until you have everything under control as much as you can. And then you start analyzing. And you also split up the work. So, Angie, when you said micromanaging, that would have been detrimental. So what I would typically do in a situation like this is I would say, all right, you take care of the transferee. You figure out how to help them right now in this situation of crisis. And I take care of the client, the corporate client who's calling me and saying, what's happening with my transferee? Because you consultant can't talk to both of them at the same time, right? But it has to be very timely. So the best way to do it is to delegate it and to split it up. And you take this part and I take this part. And that way you can act in a crisis and do a reasonably good job containing the elements. And then you can start analyzing, okay, what went wrong? Why did it go wrong? What could we have done? Angie, your example is very much what I've experienced as well under different circumstances.
Yes, Ron, we have about 15 minutes remaining, just as an advisory. Ron?
Angie, let me advance just a little bit more your perspective of micromanaging. My thought is a leader who micromanages is the person who is going to be almost literally over your shoulder. I want to control you. And I want to control you because maybe I don't trust you, but inherent in that is some aspect of insecurity on my part. If by chance you, one of my staff members, don't make a decision I would have made, can I help you think into that the next time to maybe where, okay, did you consider in the context maybe of critical thinking, did you consider all the facts and factors, or did you just pick one or two and make a hasty decision? But in the context of mentoring and maybe coaching as well, I want to help you with your thought process, and I have to believe in you to do that. A lot said, Angie, but does micromanaging at its core almost involve, I don't trust you, or some degree of that, I want to control you?
Well, I think that's behind it. Now, obviously, I never get to coach the manager of the client. Yeah, sometimes I feel like I should do that. So we don't get to see the other perspective. But I really feel like when we talk about mentoring high achievers, it's important that you don't project your own weaknesses into the mentee. Yeah, and that you are very well settled in, and you know yourself well before you mentor somebody. And before you try to support someone, I think you should know yourself really well, so that you can also separate, your own issues from the issue of the person who seeks your help. I mean, I think that's generally advisable.
I would say, Ron, there's a linear relationship here about that trust. Yes, that person doesn't trust the employee, but I suspect many micromanagers have managers who don't trust them, because one of their fear spots is being asked by their boss, hey, what's happening about project X? And they're not knowing. And it's that fear of not, so because their own boss has not set up an environment or climate where there's transparency and it's okay not to know. I mean, the correct answer is I don't know, but I'll go find out, because you can't know everything these days. But it's that I would suspect many micromanagers have bosses who don't trust them. So it's kind of a cascading effect.
Oh, it is. You're right on.
Yeah.
That I'm just going to carry on the culture, the environment in which I'm brought up. And no, we have to have the courage to say, no, I'm going to be a chain breaker. And I'm not going to carry on that culture. And then it's a matter of how can I amicably propose a different way of doing things.
Ken?
It's interesting when you're talking about micromanagers and managers who are demonstrating a lack of trust in their employees. In working with them, let's say you wanted to coach them to be less of a micromanager. That would mean really getting into what's psychologically behind their need to control and influence their employees and hover over them. And as you mentioned, it'd be a combination of self-doubt, insecurity, lack of confidence, and frankly, they're looking at their own behavior. And there's a little bit of lack of trust in themselves. If I were in that situation, I wasn't being micromanaged, I know I'd go out and I'd goof around. I'm not going to let my employees do that. So they're telling you a lot about themselves by the way that they manage, specifically when they're micromanaging others. And to kind of hold that mirror up and to talk with them using some of the key terms and thoughts that are already presented here today, can I kind of help shed some light on them and their own style of dealing with others and working with others. And that can help them to look at the world a little differently, instead of just saying, well, my employees, this or that. Just take a look at what's going on inside of your head. Not exactly using that word, that phrasing, but for them to get some better self-insights so they can get better insights, more accurate insights into the people with whom they're working.
Christian.
Probably recommend Stephen's book to them.
There you go.
Yes. This is great. What a great conversation. I'm learning so much. Yeah.
Let me I could, let me add, there's one other aspect for your audience, I think, that has to do with mentoring and coaching, particularly senior executives. A lot of times it's not about their functional skills. It's about their behaviors. And I'm not necessarily saying negative behaviors, it's who they are. So to give you an example, I've been mentoring, coaching a person who was the head of their IT department in a company, but I was hired by their boss, the president of the company, and said, we want to groom this person to be our chief technology officer. But he's such an introvert. He stays, he stays within his department. So one of the things I would start working with him in the first 6 months was to get him out. And for instance, I almost forced him to go to the office Christmas parties that the other departments are holding. I said, get out there and go to the finance departments, just stop by or bring a box of cookies with you, but go and meet people. And that has helped him so much because he broadened his network within the organization that he didn't have before, because he was just so focused on tasks, so focused on results. I've got to run the IT department. Here's all the things we need to get done. And he just focused on, and he did a really good job of getting results, but he was never going to move up in the organization to a level that he could. And now, after 6 months, he was appointed to the executive team, and now he has been made the chief technology officer of the organization. So it's working with people, taking their strengths and closing those gaps again. So it's a lot of times about behaviors, not necessarily negative behaviors, but just who they are. How can you grow them as a person?
So you as a coach with that ticket to ride, how forceful can you be to redirect somebody who's got a brain and very active in their own space? And who are you to tell him what to do? How do you deal with that kind of challenge?
I never tell them what to do. I just ask questions to guide them along the road and say, well, what would be the benefits if you did this, or how would you feel comfortable? And then the key thing is after you did that, is to make them reflect on, well, how did it feel? And at first it felt uncomfortable. And a side story here, he was with his boss in Las Vegas at their annual retreat. And they were playing blackjack, and everyone else left. And he thought, he actually told me this. He said, what would Stephen do? Because he wanted to go back to his room. It was 11 o'clock at night. And he thought, what would Stephen do? And he thought, Stephen would stay here and keep playing with his boss. And he played blackjack with his boss at 2 o'clock in the morning. Probably didn't really enjoy it as much as I would have, for instance, but it helped him build that, strengthen those relationship bonds. So it's the relationship you have with the person that you're coaching, much like the relationship you have with your significant other. How often can you get your significant other to move in a direction that you think is best for her, or you, or him, or they, or you together? So it's based on your relationship.
Yes, Ron.
Yeah, I will say that it is a matter of, to advance what Stephen was just saying, it is a matter of knowing people. And you can be an introvert, but it's, for me personally, a recluse is a person who doesn't want to associate with other people. My wife is introverted, or let's just say a behind the scenes kind of person, but she's not a recluse. She wants to associate with the people. She doesn't need 50 friends. She's fine with a one-on-one kind of relationship. But as Stephen and all of us are saying, it's getting to know people. And so there are some times if a person is an introvert, but goes to that, what for me is a different degree of being a recluse, that may be some aspect of an insecurity. And at that point, as Stephen is saying, be willing to listen. Don't offer solutions, just be willing to listen, and you may help them discover why it is they are a recluse.
Ron, in having Air Force pilots and that kind of organization that you were a part of or led, how does that enter? I mean, that's really technically skilled, high-powered, and you're talking about emotions, which is sort of like fish out of water kind of thing, but it's more important than ever to maintain control, self-control, as well as to understand the people around you. And I'm getting lost in my own words here. Please help me understand that situation.
No, I think I know exactly where you're going with that, Ed. And I will interject here very jokingly. Marty, my wife, would frequently tell the flight surgeon with whom I had an annual physical, don't bother checking for a heart or anything related to it. The guy doesn't have one. And so, that's part of the fighter pilot bravado. But there are those of us, and many of us who are fighter pilots we all know the type A, or the, if you're DISC certified, a D personality. And statistically, there's only 3% of us. And so I think, our master creator may say, we can't stand it more than 3% of you, because you would do damage to other people with your bravado attitude. Well, with all that having been said, Ed, it is a matter of helping others think into, as a leader, I want to go the way first. I have to be willing to do what I'm saying. And you will know if I'm saying one thing and not doing. So I have to be able to, I have to demonstrate to you, yep, been there, done that, or I am willing to go that way. And I don't want to just show the way or tell you, but I've got to demonstrate that I'm a person who's good for my word, and my actions demonstrate that.
Thank you. Christian?
Can I just add one more
yes.
thing?
Yes.
Sorry to what Ron said earlier. And also Stephen, about the, let's say, held back person, maybe introverted person, because I meet a lot of those personalities in coaching. And they're not only women, also men that, don't consider themselves alpha males, and sometimes feel imposter syndrome and have a hard time talking out loud in meetings, or just don't really like to talk. But they're brilliant people. And one of the things that I wish that when we talk about high achievers is that we accept that personalities are different, and that somebody can be a high achiever and still be introverted, and it's okay. And I think this is really missing in the conversation about talent development and the talent pipeline. Still today in companies, the loudest voice gets promoted faster, gets access to international assignments, and is seen more. The person who sits in the office is seen more than the remote worker. We're not judging performance based on the actual performance data. We very often judge performance based on very old-fashioned things, like being in the office, which is ridiculous if we think about it. So I really wish, if we talk about mentoring high achievers, that we also look at the quiet voices. That person that you just mentioned, the IT person that is supposed to become the CTO and maybe has been working like a busy bee in the background all the time and hasn't been seen, has not had the visibility. These are the people that actually need mentoring and support.
Yeah, and he got that mentoring from me, and I think as president as well over time. But and that is, he's not a different person today. We've just enhanced his ability. I mean, he's still an introvert. Wasn't quite the recluse.
Just talks a bit more.
Well, it's not talking. It's that inability to socialize. It's that reluctance. Not even inability. It's that reluctance. It's like, God, it's such a waste of time. I really don't want to go to that party and chit chat. I got work to do. But to be a successful senior executive, you have to, at least in this particular company, you need to get around and understand, talk to people and find out what their pain points are beyond the IT briefs that they're giving you. So it's, I'm not saying if he hadn't done it, he wouldn't have gotten promoted. Possibly not. But that's what mentoring is all about, taking and helping people enhance their skills or enhance their behavior or help them grow. And he would tell you today, he's a better person. He's grown from that. But I haven't changed him. I haven't molded him, haven't made him Stephen Howard 2.0 for hopefully.
Christian?
So Angie and Stephen teed it up very nicely, what I was going to say, going back to mentoring. So yes, you cannot change the person ultimately. And if they're introvert and they don't like speaking, and I'm talking about somebody speaking in public, not necessarily in a formal way, but kind of what we're doing here. You can't just force them to do that. You can't just, throw a presentation book at them and say, go study this and you'll be better at it. The question really is to figure out, what do I need to change in their mindset to get them to start thinking, hey, I can do this. There's some value in not being the loudest voice in the room, but being a voice in the room. Oftentimes that's already good enough, rather than just not saying anything. And one of the ways that I personally found to kind of approach this is to go back to their network, to go back to where do they feel comfortable, where do they trust that the audience, wherever that may be, between one and hundreds, is on their side and is rooting for them. And once that they go that far and say, oh yeah, for instance, I had somebody who said, yeah, when I coach baseball, and I'm talking to the team, I feel very comfortable, I feel confident, I have no problem talking to them. I said, okay, now take that, and then we start developing it, and all of a sudden they're talking in an important business meeting, because they take the mindset of the baseball team, and their words and their content are different, but the way they approach it is the same. If you get to that point as a mentor, you've kind of already won, right? Because again, it doesn't have to be the loudest voice in the room.
Ken?
Yeah, what Stephen's doing is encouraging these folks to try some different behaviors. And what happens is that you engage in that behavior here. I'm introverted, but maybe I'm going to play blackjack later at night, or I'm talking to people, I'm going to that company party and thinking, I can do this, and I kind of like it. That's personally rewarding. Behaviors are rewarded, they're repeated. So if we can kind of help them take that first step to maybe open the door to being a little bit more sociable, a little more interactive, that will help them to continue. You can look at that in terms of other behaviors where employees are not engaging in behaviors that would really help them. So as a coach, you kind of give them some encouragement, some support, give it a try, put your foot in the water. Yeah, I agree with Chris. You don't just hand them a book, hey, here, read this, and then you'll go out and be an extrovert, but just to change the behavior, which will lead to it. But I have to go back to what Ron said. It just came to mind, and I have to say it. With the flight physical, and your wife said, "Hey, they won't find a heart." My attitude was, if you're going to do that on a pilot, you're going to find something else. You're going to find a backbone. You're going to find a spine that's very strong and very important. And thank goodness saves anyone who's in that plane. And frankly, flying for the Air Force saves America. So I believe that spine's going to be very strong. I think it comes out in the behaviors and certainly in your coaching, in the confidence that you project, which others can emulate as well. When you're coaching, there's an aspect of emulation, modeling that's going on that helps these folks at the same time. And I just want to say thank you for serving the country for all those years. It means a great deal.
Thank you, Ken.
Cheers. So, Ken, is any of this helpful to you as you're writing your next book on persuasion?
Of course it is. Listening to all these shared ideas and interesting perspectives, it's very edifying and educational. So the answer in a word is yes. Thanks to all of you.
Okay, so our next edition, which we should have pretty soon, I think, we should bring in the topic of AI, and how is that going to be used in mentoring or coaching high achievers, if it will be. I don't know what to say, but I certainly want to learn. Ken, what do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's where the world not only is going, it's where it is, and it's moving along at an exponential pace. So sure, the more we learn about it, understand it, frankly, the assets as well as the questions, the liabilities, there still is the issue. The word that's used is hallucinations that come along with AI. So there's a caveat that goes with it. But sure, the more we understand it and recognize what it is and how it works and where it's going, the more effective we're going to be as coaches, mentors, and leaders and productive people and organizations.
Well, it's been a great Friday the 13th. And thank you all for being on the show. Please come back, Ron, and everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all of you.
Nice
Have a
meeting
nice
Bye-bye.
week.
everyone.
Be
Thank
well
you.
Good
all.
to meet you, Ron. Thank
Have a good
you.
Good
weekend.
to meet you.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.